My final piece of advice is join private school, where there is no popularity. There are only polos and khakis. It is a utopia.
My name's Mohnish, and I'm your main host. Welcome to Real Talk. So on the podcast today, we answer a really good question. Why are nerds unpopular? And if you are a nerd, are you destined to live a terrible life afterward? Right? This episode is a love letter. It's a love letter to me, my co-host Kevin and Armi, and it's a love letter to the kinds of people we were in high school and middle school and growing up, especially with amazing bowl cuts. And we were nerds. This is a good episode. I really like it, and definitely tune in. It's more surprising than you think.
I was the biggest nerd, dude. I mean, since the time
I've seen a photo of you, by the way. I mean, classic lanky, very skinny.
I had all the attributes
showing
necessary.
Yeah.
You know, I was small, Asian. I had glasses. I was considered intelligent by my peers. I remember in elementary school, I was always thought of as the smart kid, which is hilarious because now I'm
the stupidest guy.
What happened to me? But I remember all the kids would just, you know, either come to me for homework answers, or they just generally thought that I was like the smartest kid in class. And the teachers didn't help either because they would constantly commend me on being smart. And I remember there was this. I remember there was this. I think it was maybe sixth grade where I was really good at math specifically at that time, and I remember when we would do math in class, me and a select few, I think 3 or 4 other kids, would actually go outside in the hallway. Yeah. Because we were ahead of everyone else. And the teacher put us outside so that we could continue progressing at our own speed rather than the speed of the class. And like that sounds like a cool thing. Like she's letting us kind of find our own pace, learning through the material. But it just isolated us even further from the class. And it was like I felt as if every time we did math work, which was like every single day, that because I was going outside with these other group of smarter kids, it was Thanks. This is.
I want to hang out with Tommy. Tommy's cool. Come on. Yeah. No,
don't put me with these losers, please.
It was right. It was funny because I was part of math team in 8th grade, and dude, I was lanky. I was brown. I had a comic book collection, dude. Army, I have a 200 comic. Like it's not just a comic book collection, by the way. It's like the cellophane bags with like the cardboard and like the comic book, the mint condition comic book. And like, then of course me and Kevin just recently saw Civil War, and I
don't spoil it for me. Don't spoil it for me.
I think that you are the brown Peter Parker.
Yeah.
You're Peter Patel.
I'm Peter Patel without the cool powers. Basically, I was extremely nerdy, especially in 7th and 8th grade. I drew a lot. I was in every club. I remember the 8th grade award ceremony. They had like basically the award ceremony is where they have each club, and each basically the standout member from each club would come up and get their piece of paper. And I was the only kid that for almost at like easily 98% of every club, I would walk up and just get my award every single time. And everyone else was like, what the hell is this kid doing? Like, I was in Model UN. I was in like Honor Society. I was in Scholar Bowl. I was on a math team. And I remember the moment I kind of realized I was a nerd. I looked at a previous photo of myself. This was when I was in high school. And I remember I was like, who is this lanky, skinny ass Indian kid staring back. Is that really me? And because at the time I thought I was awesome, right? At the time I thought I was like,
That's funny,
right?
This entire time throughout all of my nerdhood, I hated myself so much. You were just like, I'm sick.
You're also painfully self-aware. And I think my self-awareness kind of caught up to me in high school. Whereas, you know what I'm saying? Whereas in 7th and 8th grade, probably less self-aware. Armi, what was your nerdhood status growing up?
I was in a weird position where I wasn't quite a full-blown Kevin-style nerd, but I also wasn't completely on the cool side either.
Yeah.
I kind of like bounced between both sides. I mean, I definitely have a lot of nerdy traits, but they weren't the kind that generally would cause problems for me socially in school. So I love to read. I've always been obsessed with reading. I've always been kind of obsessed with movies. I wasn't
Kevin.
quite.
No. Armi has the Dark Knight screenplay in
All
his
three of them.
apartment. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
No, it actually is a really good screenplay too. It's easier to read than a lot of them. Anyway, but I only just got that. Like some of these, and that's actually another thing is I used to knit in school. So I did knit in school.
That's pretty much the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Okay, yeah, I was Asian, nerdy. I had glasses. You knitted in school. What the fuck?
Wait, I didn't hear that. Sorry, I was too busy coughing. You knitted in school?
Yeah,
What?
I knitted a sweater.
Who is this clown on our podcast who's knitting in school? That's it's both.
See, that's so.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying.
I was going to say it's just so weird that it's almost not even nerdy. Just
you're
like
such
in a
an
category.
independent spirit, Army. You do your own thing no matter what. Like, like if you wanted to shit on the sidewalk, I feel like you would do that. Like, I feel like you'd be down.
Oh, I get it. Army dropped out of high school because they all called him Sweater Boy all the time.
I made that in 6th grade. Your argument is invalid.
Wrong grade, asshole. Wrong grade. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would do stuff like that. My dad was a science teacher at the school where I went to middle school. But honestly, I also had enough, I think, quote unquote, cool characteristics that it kind of saved me. Like I was very good at sports and I played a bunch of different sports. I was pretty good at I've always been pretty good at making friends and talking to strangers, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't think I ever really felt any negative repercussions from my nerdiness. That's like, obviously I had many, many other issues as we've talked about, but being a nerd really wasn't one of them. And also I think part of that is because I went to a smaller school, to private school.
Private school.
As Kevin likes to say.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Oh, fuck, that's hilarious. Yeah, so I went to a private school where, I wouldn't say that like intelligence. Basically, there was an expectation that everyone was going to work harder than normal. And it wasn't. We had it was more challenging than I think a public school in some ways. So basically, parents just didn't send their kids there if they didn't want to work. And so I think being more studious or attentive to your homework, that kind of thing, was just considered normal. And it wasn't really, like you kind of just had to, and it was taken for granted. So it wouldn't have been considered nerdy there.
That's interesting how you said that you were nerdy, but you had traits that counterbalanced your nerdiness. I feel like I was the same way, especially in 8th grade, when I kind of realized if I made the class laugh, they probably wouldn't want to beat me up, right? Like they would be on my side a little bit. So I feel like a lot of nerdiness is sort of, when I was growing up, I wasn't so much of a nerd, and I had traits that were valued by the popular kids. Right, and one of them was making the class laugh and making kids laugh that I would use. Right, it almost like excused the fact that I was a lanky Indian kid who was in every honors club and was getting straight A's. And I think that was sort of my saving grace, actually. That I actually, I mean, we talk about this in the funny episode, but I literally would watch stand-up comedians and I would practice in the mirror. And I remember when
You're a psycho.
Yeah. I'm a fucking sociopath, but I remember actually making the class laugh for the first time, and I felt the tides of my existence within middle school like slowly shift, because I was super quiet, dude. I didn't have the confidence to like talk, and I wanted to be. It wasn't like I was, the outsider, but I relished in being the outsider. I wanted to be the insider. There was this part of me that always wanted to be in the in group, right? It's just that early on, especially in 7th grade, I didn't have the traits that popular kids cared about. And I think a lot of those traits, especially in high school, can be kind of screwed up, right? A lot of the behaviors and traits that the cool kids, quote unquote, do actually value is pretty ridiculous,
like
right?
Pussy getting ability.
Yeah.
Huge trait.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the name in evolution psychology is pussy getting ability. Actually.
Yeah, I read it in my textbook.
Yeah.
No, that actually brings up a really good point, in that I think a lot of the traits that people consider indicative of nerdiness aren't bad in and of themselves, or don't even make you nerdy in and of themselves. It's more that they signal a lack of other traits.
Yeah.
So here's that people do value. So here's an example. Let's say like you walk into school and there's that kid who's just reading in the corner, not talking to anyone, kind of like not making eye contact. He's probably not going to be very socially fun to be around. He's probably that's not true. Let's obviously everyone has bad days, that kind of thing. But just as a stereotypical example, it signals to other people that you're probably not going to be that great of a conversationalist. You probably aren't as interested in sports or other physical activities. You probably are a little more hyper focused on certain topics. But let's say that kid is just tired that day, and then he goes out and he kicks ass on the football field, and he's really fun to talk to the next day when he's feeling better. Like, nobody's going to hold the fact that he was reading against them. Like, just having a quote unquote nerdy trait doesn't matter. It's more of the lack of the other valuable traits that I think is dangerous for their social.
I mean, as far as specific traits that will actually make you high status in high school, mostly it's physical attractiveness, verbal intelligence, and social proof, right? So, do you not look like a troll? That's number one, right? That can easily kids can be incredibly mean against kids just for the sole reason that the fact that they're not good looking, right? Or that they don't want you in the group because, hey, they make us look bad just by factor of association. Right.
Yep.
And then verbal intelligence. Can this guy hold a conversation? Right. Is he good with words? Right. Can he convey his intent with words? And then social proof. Right. Is there people that dig Johnny, or does everyone want to take a shit on Johnny's locker? Right.
I remember growing up. Speaking on verbal intelligence, I mean, I was so bad. Like, I had zero conversational ability for like the first 75% of my life, I feel. It wasn't until I was, late high school where I really started to hone on my social skills. But I remember every single time I would get into a confrontation with a bully or a popular kid or anything, I would never say any of the things that I wanted to say because I just didn't have the confidence to say them. But right after anything happened, like for a week, I would just be playing like the conversation back in my head, and I would say all the perfect things, and this fantasy of how the conversation could have gone. And I'm just so sick, and like because I told the bully off with my incredible verbal skills, I would just I would take his place in social group, and all the girls would like me. Complete insanity.
You would have the perfect comeback, then you'd stab him in the face, and then he'd die. Everyone would cheer you on, and you'd be like, "Hell yeah, I'm top dog now!"
Flip over his corpse, and the entire school would be cheering.
Yeah, dude. For me, it was like almost the opposite. It was more like it wasn't the opposite, but it was like you kind of had the words in your head come to you, but you didn't have the confidence to say them. For me, it was like I was so stupid that like nothing. I just blanked in my. I would just be like some kid would say something mean to me, and I would just be like, "Oh yeah, thanks, man." And I would just like walk awkwardly up.
You're a fucking terrorist. Oh, thanks, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah. No, and because I mean, part of it was like I didn't want to I didn't want to be the guy that made the popular kids mad because that would automatically make me part of the out group, right? Yeah. Dude. Here's the thing: nerds, especially in high school, from what I understand, I mean, you might have seen this, but have you ever seen that kid? There's nothing really wrong about him. It's whatever, but for whatever reason, they just happen to be an island of one. They're just like, there's a regular person, but they just hang out by themselves and they just kind of do their own thing and they don't have that many friends, right?
Oh yeah.
I've seen that in high schools and I've seen that growing up, and I was definitely, part of that at separate times. But some of the reality of just being a nerd in high school, not having the status, not having the high status within the tribes and groups in your high school, a lot of that comes with just being sad and being miserable and being extremely lonely, right? I was lucky in that I had traits, just like Armi did, that counterbalance that and that people had value in, right? Because no one cared that I was a voracious reader, that I was a good writer, that I was, even when I was working with best-selling authors when I was junior, I think, in high school, no one cared. That gave me that gave me just about zero status points on the status hierarchy, right? But yeah. I know, Kevin, for you, I mean, I feel like it was very painful for you, right? I mean, there are moments
absolutely.
for me where it was painful, but generally speaking, it wasn't a painful experience, I would say. I
didn't really have the traits to counterbalance my nerdiness, I don't think. Not for a while, at least. I was never really considered the funny kid in the sense that you were, Mohnish, because my confidence was so low that I just never made any jokes aloud, maybe until like super late high school. So I don't know. My personality now is nothing like how it was throughout school. I was very, very quiet, very introverted until late high school, like I said. So yeah, I had a pretty painful experience dealing with my own nerdiness.
For the listeners out there, Kevin is crying right now on the podcast. Yeah.
I just wanted to be cool, damn
it. Yeah, no. Army's going to be the bully on the podcast now. No, no, I mean, it's weird because a lot of the traits that I had growing up were traits that the popular kids didn't value, and I was so confused why they didn't value them. I was like, dude, writing is amazing. Being intelligent is great. Having high willpower, doing a lot of clubs, being involved, these are things that I thought should have got me the status. But they don't, because the popular kids don't value those traits, right? In the same way that in a prison, right? Like the top gangs, getting real. No, basically in the prison, how they value certain masculinity traits and they value toughness, they value being able to defend yourself in a weird way that we don't value it here.
Yeah, when I was in the cell.
I'm just like imagining this giant, like 6'8" Russian dude, like walking around, like picking his prison wife or something.
Jesus Christ!
He's like, oh, he has more masculine traits.
You're very lanky. I like you.
You look very good.
I like you. You will be mine now.
Your brown complexion really it turns me on. It is nice. It is nice.
Your brown skin so soft.
You tasty like chocolate.
Tastes like chocolate. No, I don't know, man. It's high school especially, where if you associate with kids that are lower status than you, there's that weird internal tension, right? I remember when I would be hanging out with kids that were quote unquote lower status than me, or at least that what I thought were, and I would always talk to them. I'd be super nice to them. My go-to rule was just be nice to everyone, treat everyone like a human being.
Right.
But I remember feeling this weird internal status mechanism inside me kind of go off the radar. And I was like, I just don't want to be seen by,
I thought the same way, dude.
Yeah.
I remember anytime I hung out with a kid that I knew was like low-tier social hierarchy, which I was as well. I knew it was. I knew it was
the worst part. We're all losers, and we're like, we're
yeah. And I would always think like, fuck, if I get seen hanging out with this kid, then I'm gonna be a little less popular. But I always fit in with that tier of the social ladder, anyways. So I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to say too that Yeah, yeah, Kevin, you're just screwed no matter what. Yeah, but going back to what we talked about earlier, where it's true that a lot of the traits that are valuable in school are not valuable in the real world, and vice versa. The ones that are valuable in the real world aren't as valuable in school. And that's why you often have these kids who are not popular in school, and then they go on to do great things outside of it. And so I don't think that means that if you're popular in school, like you're going to be a loser later on. Obviously, there are people like that. I know some of them.
Yeah.
I actually do know several.
Isn't that the best though? Isn't that the
it feels
best
so
when you-
good.
when you see the popular kids that were just fucking assholes and they just suck
Yes.
now? Oh, it's
And now
so
they like
awesome.
they've never left their hometown. They're like working as a lifeguard until they're 30. I'm like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah. And I go to their house.
No, you're right. It
I
feels
pee on
great.
them and laugh.
It's like they wear the same clothes that when they peaked in high school, they wear for the rest of their life,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah. Disco
They
stew, right? Like it's
Disco stew.
disco stew. Yeah,
Hey guys, I'm Disco Stew.
yeah.
They basically do. And so basically I think if you're smart enough to keep growing, it's fine to be popular in school, obviously. I mean, that's ideal, right? Who doesn't want that?
Right.
But a lot of kids don't. And those are usually the dumb ones anyway.
This podcast, my bad. Go on.
No, I was just going to say that also. So like, I think it's still important to work on developing all of these traits, and including being smart and reading and all the quote unquote nerdy stuff. So basically, I don't want somebody reading this who's in middle school going like, "Oh, like okay, cool. I'm just gonna avoid that stupid nerdy stuff, and then I'm gonna like be an athlete." Like, no. Like, do the nerdy stuff too. Like, knit in class if that's your jam. Well, that might be taking it a little far, but do this all the stuff that might be considered less cool, as long as you're still working on the other stuff too. Yeah, and like you said, the having any kind of relation to sports gives you a tiny little leg up, and it's just a good experience.
It gives you a baseline level of cool, basically. Like that's why I joined cross country, and I was dog shit terrible at it. I was literally last place every single time. The first time I ran 3 miles, Army, you're gonna shit your pants when you hear this 3 mile time. Freshman year, 3 mile time. Just guess what it was. Guess what it was.
Like 31 minutes.
35 minutes.
Oh my god! Wow.
It's so bad, so bad. It's not
Sorry,
even
man.
bad. Yeah, no, it was terrible. And I mean, I got it down to like 20 minutes, 21 minutes. That was a semester of like hard work. Yeah,
crazy.
Can you give me 1 second? Someone is knocking at the door, and it's really annoying.
I told you I was fucking recording. Don't you fucking interrupt me.
What?
Nothing. Let's just keep talking.
I have it all recorded. So I know what you guys said anyway. I'm going to listen back to it. You can't hide from me, Kevin. You can't hide from me, guys. No, that was.
Oh, looks like it's time to go. See ya.
That was housekeeping. I can't believe that happened. Yeah, I was so slow, but even being on cross country got me a little bit of like, hey, he's a little athletic, right? He's on a team, right? I mean, it didn't get me that much at all, but it got me a solid amount. Now, I don't want this podcast sort of to be an indictment of nerds, or actually it shouldn't at all, but an indictment of the popular kids, right? Because you can be popular in high school and turn out fine afterward, and you can be a nerd in high school and turn out fine afterward. I mean, high school's a war zone, dude. High school's a war zone. But one of the things, the popular kids, the jocks, those archetypes, right? They lack certain things that they need to cultivate, right? But the one thing that nerds lack, right? They have incredible intelligence. Like they make things, right? Especially in an age now, like right now in the real world, people value intelligence a lot, right? In the same way in the 60s they valued activism, like how like being an activist had a certain luster to it, being very smart and being intelligent and like having high status jobs, like working at Google or working at a tech startup, very high status now, especially in California and things that value that kind of thing. But one of the things, they're extremely intelligent, and that's something you should keep throughout high school. Like basically give the middle finger to everyone else when you're doing your own thing. At the same time, one thing you need to cultivate, and one thing that I worked really hard to, is basically to compensate for the social ineptitude that a lot of nerds, I think being nerdy, I think it's defined by a lack of social intelligence. And that is something you can actually grow
That's like my number one piece of advice to anybody. You can be smart, and that's awesome, but I mean, social skills are so undervalued throughout growing up because there's no class that tells you how to interact with human beings. You have to figure it out by yourself. And when you get caught behind, which I did, that's when you get labeled as a nerd. When you don't know how to interact with other human beings, you're always going to be part of the out group.
Yeah.
So like in kind of late high school, like late sophomore, maybe early junior year, I kind of consciously recognized that I lacked social skills because my entire life I'd been asking myself, why am I always part of the out group? Why am I always the nerd or the kid that people don't want to hang out with? It's because I didn't know how to fucking interact with other human beings.
Yeah.
Of course no one wanted to hang out with me. I could not talk to them. What was I going to do? Sit there and just exist and be smart? No.
Yeah.
So I started using the internet as a tool to kind of dissect social dynamics and figure out how to talk to people. And one thing that I remember doing is I would always practice having conversations with cashiers or like waiters and stuff like that. Because
that's actually a great idea.
Yeah, their job is to, talk to you and be a representative of the company. They have to be nice and talk to you unless they're a shitty employee. So even today, if you see me, like when I sit down, I always have conversations with the waiter or waitress or the cashier because that's how I learned how to talk to people.
Also makes their job a little bit more fun, right?
Right. Yeah.
I tried doing that once and then I just kind of posted out. I would go to Starbucks and I would intentionally just talk to a stranger. And I tried it once and it was actually a really good conversation, but afterward I was like, dude, that was way too scary. I'm never doing that again. Like it was just way too hard.
One time my mom wanted me to get Starbucks for her, and this was like kind of when I was like 16, 17. And I took my brother's 4 years younger than me. And I remember I sat in the parking lot and I was like, okay, Daniel, you need to go get the coffee. And he's like, no, like mother told you to do it. And I'm like, no. You need to do it because I want you to learn how to talk to people. And then I just sat there and I would not leave the parking lot until he got out of the car and talked to her. And he never did it. And he got really pissed at me. And it was totally me just trying to impose my own lack of social skills on him and tell him.
Look at him struggle.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say like that. I think sports, it's not just like when you sign up for football, you get a popularity badge or something like that.
Yeah.
I think a big benefit of it is you're in a group of people who all have something in common that are working together on something. And honestly, even people who were not nice to me at first in high school, I honestly had very few people who were just dicks to me. Maybe I just wasn't there long enough, but I did have a few people who just ignored me. And then when they realized like, oh, he's actually a pretty good athlete, would at least talk to me. And I think just being next to people, like proximity does make people like each other more. But even more than that, even if you suck at social skills and aren't good at talking, you can at least watch other people do it when you're in a community like that. It doesn't have to be football. It doesn't have to be sports related. It could be drama club or key club or whatever. So I would say that's essential. If you're not in some group like that and you're in high school, then you're making a mistake.
Yeah. Final
It's
thoughts.
the same thing as-
Yeah, go on.
I was just gonna say really quick. It's kind of like how we talked about becoming funny, Mohnish. We observed other people who were funny, so that we could alter our behavior to match theirs, kind of in a way. And I think you can do the same thing with social skills. You can just watch other people who do know how to talk and who are good conversationalists, and then you can adapt to, I guess, grow your own social ability and kind of model it after other people.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, final thoughts is the big take home message, I think, is that even if it sucks, and even if you're looking back at who you were in high school and it sucked, you have a trait, and that's your intelligence. And being intelligent helps you in other parts of your life. It helps you actually have the self-awareness to gain social intelligence. It helps you in other parts. It helps you get a career, right? It helps you understand things, right?
Oh, that was one other thing. Sorry. But I just wanted to say that, like you were talking about earlier with school and how they don't teach like social skills.
Yeah.
One of the things that is like one of those things that like when you look back and you're like, fuck, there's assholes. Like, why did they do this to my life? For me is like exactly that. So how schools place so little emphasis on any of this, and how parents are often so ineffective at teaching this kind of thing, which we've talked about ad nauseum. But honestly, I have gotten many jobs, most of my jobs, because I was just a nice person to deal with, and I was enthusiastic and fun to be around.
Yeah.
Like, I know there are people out there who are more qualified than me for many of these positions, but I was a good person. Like, I was fun to be around, and they hired me for that. So honestly, I would, like, let's say I had a kid in school, I would be much happier if he had all season Bs and he was doing well with other kids and was well liked than if he was a straight A student.
Yeah. Introversion doesn't stop the fact that you're a social animal that needs friends, needs human interaction, needs to hang out with people, needs to build social skills. I mean, it's the number one predictor of happiness is relationships. It's weird because I think when you're answering the question, why are nerds unpopular? I think the main reason, dude, is basically, in a deeper sense, nerds, especially, I mean, me, right? But would rather be smart than be popular. And obviously that sounds ridiculous because if you're a nerd in high school, you're like, dude, I'm miserable right now not being popular. But if you had to give a nerd between the choice of losing a couple IQ points, right, or becoming popular, or not being popular and keeping your IQ, I think a lot of people who value intelligence and value the things they do and value basically their smarts, right, I think a lot of them would choose the former, right, or the latter. Actually, I'm not sure which one I said, but
yeah, they'd rather be smart than popular. Yeah.
And being popular, dude, it's alliances, man. Like, it's who you know. It takes work. It's a 24/7 job. These kids are the kids that were popular, they were on they were on Twitter, they were on Facebook, they were just tweeting their clown lives away, and right, yeah. Like they were just going nuts. But
no, I think before we sign off, I think that's one good point. Is there's a difference between being popular and being socially intelligent. For instance, like a lot of the kids in high school, again, we've talked about this before, but they often get a huge leg up because their parents know each other, or they're all friends with kids from middle school, or they have older brothers at the school. Like, there are a lot of other kind of cheating, like almost like cheat codes for popularity, if you will. Whereas you can be a very socially intelligent person with a much smaller friend group. It's just you have fewer common interests with the rest of the school.
Right. Any last thoughts?
Just that. Oh, if you want a job, you should be a programmer and move to San Francisco because you'll get hired. Don't let
very specific advice. Army. By the way, if you're in San Francisco, there's a job opening for really nice people. They are awesome.
No, but dude, like, just back to our conversation about nerdiness early on, when we were like, like, if you like programming, just do it. Like, if anyone in high school or middle school tells you not to be a programmer or that it's stupid, please don't listen to that person. Like, you'll be like the most hireable person on earth, but if you end up being good at it.
My final piece of advice is join private school, where there is no popularity. There are only polos and khakis. It is a utopia.
It's a utopia. All right. Hey, first, thanks for listening to the podcast. I love you. Second, if you liked that episode, make sure to leave a good old-fashioned review. It is going to be the one thing that's going to help us really take advantage of the new and noteworthy section of iTunes and really get up there and hit the charts. Special thanks goes to Armi for helping out with the research, Kevin for helping out with editing, Vishali for helping out with content, and CJ Beats for those hot rhymes. This is Real Talk, signing off.